Today's episode is going to be a little bit different because we're taking a look at the songs from my new album, Roll On Cowboys. Roll On Cowboys is a double album of cowboy duets featuring my friends Ramblin Jack Elliott, Flemons, Pipp Gillette, Brenn Hill, Corb Lund, Waddie Mitchell, Michael Martin Murphy, Brigid Reedy, Randy Riemann, Tom Russell, Rod Taylor, and Andy Wilkinson. The double CD package includes a 28-page booklet with an essay by Andy Wilkinson, notes on the songs, and quotes from the performers from Cowboy Crossroads interviews. The beautiful cover was created by legendary Western artist William Matthews, and the album is dedicated to my friend and hero, Don Edwards. The CD package is available from andyhedges.com, and you can stream the album now wherever you get your music. There will also be an album release concert in Lubbock, Texas on Tuesday, April 25th. The concert will feature most of those artists I just mentioned joining me on stage to sing all of the songs from the album. Tickets are going really fast for that event, but there are still a few left at cactustheater.com. Howdy folks, this is Andy Hedges and you're listening to Cowboy Crossroads. On each episode, I interview a different guest and ask them to share stories and discuss music, poetry, and culture from the working cowboy West and beyond. Today, I've invited guest artists from my new album to come on the show and talk a little about the songs that we recorded. Here's Roll On Cowboys. Track 1. Roll On Cowboys. East Texas songwriter Bob Campbell wrote this song after reading first-hand trail driving accounts in the Trail Drivers of Texas, edited by J. Marvin Hunter, and We Pointed 'Em North by Teddy Blue Abbott. For the lyric in the chorus, Bob found inspiration from a quote from Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry when Augustus McCrae tells Woodrow Call, "If 1,000 Comanches had cornered us in some gully and wiped us out like the Sioux just done Custer, they'd write songs about us for 100 years." I recorded Roll On Cowboys with my longtime friend, Brenn Hill, with Brigid Reedy playing the fiddle. Here's Brenn Hill.
Roll On Cowboys was written by Bob Campbell. He's one of the best songwriters I've ever met, and just kind of a little bit unheralded for how talented he is. He writes great anthems, and Roll On Cowboys is an anthem. It's timeless. You know, you'd swear that Bob Campbell was there and experienced, the trail drive era in writing this song. You know, Andy and I set out to sort of capture that, and really I think what we got embodies the endeavor that Andy has set out on to create kind of a living tradition of cowboy music, and gathering this group together and creating these duets is something I think that we'll be thanking Andy for many, many years down the road. I'm so honored to call Bob Campbell and Andy Hedges my friends, and all honors to them and their efforts, and to this great song, Roll On Cowboys.
The campfire coals are glowing, slowly dying, one by one. My pards are deep in their bedrolls. The last tall tale has been spun. I'm out here humming a sad tune as I circle the herd on the ground. The thinking of my dear home back in Texas. I left just for 30 and found. The wagon tongue is aimed at the North Star, like a big sailing ship at its sea. It's quiet as a mouse on the prairie. This warm summer night in 1883. Roll on, cowboys, roll on. Roll on, cowboys, roll on. They will sing of our deeds in 1,000 songs. Roll on, cowboys, roll on. Track 2, Dodgin' Joe. The first man to collect and publish a book of cowboy songs was New York-born cowpuncher Jack Thorpe. In his autobiography, Pardner of the Wind, Thorpe recounts his experience of seeing the campfire light of an LFD cow camp in eastern New Mexico in 1889 and hearing music drifting on the wind. When he rode into the camp of all black cowboys, there was a man named Lassus playing the banjo and singing a song about a cutting horse named Dodgin' Joe. Lassus only knew 2 verses of the song, but Thorpe wrote the verses down in his notebook. Inspired by the song, he quit his job the next day and began a 1,500-mile journey to collect cowboy songs. He never found more verses to Dodgin' Joe, and even the 2 verses he wrote down did not find their way into his 1908 book, Songs of the Cowboys. However, musician and scholar Mark Lee Gardner uncovered the 2 verses in Jack Thorpe's papers at the New Mexico State Record Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Gardner included the verses in his book, Jack Thorpe's Songs of the Cowboys. While thinking about the story of Dodgin' Joe, I started imagining what that song must have sounded like. With the help of my friend Andy Wilkinson, who wrote additional verses and a refrain, which I set to music, the cutting horse Dodgin' Joe was brought back to life. On this recording, I'm playing Dom Flemons' 1919 6-string banjo dubbed Big Head Joe, made by African-American luthier Robert H. McGinnis, and Dom is playing the bones and the harmonica. Here's Dom Flemons.
Well, when recording the song Dodgin' Joe with Andy, I was really pleased because Andy was one of the first people who got me hip to the song itself. I had always heard that Jack Thorpe had heard black cowboys sitting around the campfire singing a song, but it wasn't until I met Andy that I got to read the book Pardner of the Wind, and Jack Thorpe's posthumous autobiography, where he really mentions this song, Dodgin' Joe. And it's really, one of the things that I was so struck by was that Jack Thorpe was very specific about the type of African-American song he was interested in. Because he mentioned that a lot of the songs that the black cowboys were singing at that time were work songs or songs about the cotton fields. And there was something about Dodgin' Joe that had a different tone and a different flavor. And even in one passage, Jack Thorpe goes so far to say that in some ways cowboy singing was a reflection of the loneliness on the range. And when I think of African American music and the reflection of loneliness and a personal statement around that, I think of the blues. And so I've always been excited to think about Dodgin' Joe as a song. And then Andy and Andy Wilkinson have done a wonderful job in writing some new verses, so it was really great to be able to bring my good friend Big Head Joe, the giant 6-string banjo, an instrument that was contemporary to Jack Thorpe's time, and be able to bring that into the mix on the recording and also get to play some bones and sing some harmonies.
tell you a story of a horse I owned long, long ago. Little still dust, the color of rust, and his name was Dodgin' Joe. Lack a day, here we go. This away, that way, on Dodgin' Joe.
Now all the cow horses in Texas or anywhere else that I know, none could cut a cow from the corral as fast as my little Dodgin' Joe.
Lack a day, here we go. This away, that way, on Dodgin' Joe. Track 3, Little Joe the Wrangler. While on a cattle drive from Chimney Lake, New Mexico to Higgins, Texas in 1898, Jack Thorpe wrote this song on a paper sack. Soon after its first performance at Uncle Johnny Root's Saloon in Weed, New Mexico, the song quickly spread throughout the West. Corb Lund learned Little Joe from his grandfather, who sang it with regional Alberta references. We recorded this with Corb singing what he could remember of his grandfather's version and me singing the more traditional lyrics with a little bit of Marty Robbins' influence thrown in. Here's Corb Lund.
When Andy asked me to record Little Joe the Wrangler with him, I was thrilled because that's one of the first couple tunes I ever learned when I was just a little kid. My grandfathers used to sing those songs when they were, working cattle or sitting around the fire. Neither of them were singers, but it was from a time when songs like that were more of the folk tradition, kind of almost an oral history kind of a thing. And Little Joe the Wrangler, and When the Work's All Done This Fall, and Strawberry Roan, and those songs were, the first ones I ever really remember in my consciousness because I was just a little tyke when I heard my grandpa sing them. And then later, I heard them all on the Marty Robbins Gunfighter albums. And I was always intrigued by some of the slight differences because back in those days, I think there weren't as many monolithic songs on the radio where everybody in the whole country would get the same version. And I think it was the tail end of, like I said, the oral history kind of a thing where people would pass those on from one guy to the next in real life. And some of the geographical references and some of the technical stuff would change depending on who was singing the song and where it had migrated to. And there's a couple of things in the version that my grandfather sang that were different than the Texas versions. Some of the geographical stuff. Anyway, it's fascinating, and I was really happy to sing on the record. It was really fun.
Little Joe the Wrangler will wrangle nevermore. His days with the remuda, they are done. It was a year ago last April when he rode into our camp, a little Texas stray and all alone. It was along late in the evening when he rode up to the herd on a little old brown pony he called Chaw. With his brogan shoes and overalls, a tougher looking kid you never in your life had ever saw.
His saddle was a Texas cackbit many years ago, an oak spur on one foot lightly spun. His bedroll in a cotton sack was loosely tied behind a canteen from his saddle horn he'd slung. He said he had to leave his home, his pa had married twice, and his new ma beat him every day or two. So he saddled up old Shaw one night and lit his truck this way, and now he's trying to paddle his own canoe.
He said if we would give him work, he'd do the best he could, though he didn't know straight up about a cow. So the bossy cut him out and kindly put him on. Track 4, Long Summer Day. Originally a plantation work song, Guy and Pipp Gillette wrote new cowboy lyrics to make it a song about working with their grandfather, V.H. Porter, on his ranch in Lovelady, Texas. Although from Yonkers, New York, the Gillette brothers spent summers in East Texas on their grandfather's ranch. After their grandfather died, they moved to Texas to take over the ranching operation. Pipp is still there today. Here's Pipp Gillette.
Long Summer Day, a song that we first learned from Alan Lomax, who recorded a version, and it's a pre-war between the states song, plantation song, sung by slaves, and we changed the lyrics. We used the basic melody and changed lyrics to make it our back in the 50s growing up, trying to help my grandfather work cattle, and we wrote the lyrics. And that's the version we did. And we did it with Lloyd Wright playing fiddle on that track. And that was a lot of fun. And Andy's playing guitar and I'm playing the banjo and we both sing. So this project that Andy's put together is extraordinary. I think it's amazing in scope, the various folks he's got playing on it. And we're very excited to be a part of it.
Long summer day, make a man earn his way. Long summer day. Long summer day, make a man earn his pay. Long summer day. Cornbread and bacon early in the morning for the break of day. Hot coffee is black, rolling and a boiling for the break of day.
Call up them horses and feed them some corn for the break of day. Saddle them horses and whistle up the dogs for the break of day. Wrap some cornbread and bacon and tie it to your saddle for the long summer day. Serve a bucket and some coffee and tie it to your saddle for the long summer day.
Track 5, Root Hog or Die. Also known as the Philosophical Cowboy, this old-time song can be found in Austin and Alta Fife's book, Ballads of the Great West. The Fifes commented, "The refrain and accompanying melody have floated down through every episode in our history since the Revolution." My friend and mentor Don Edwards recorded this song on 2 records, each time with different melodies. However, this version is from yet another melody that Don used for this song, which I learned from a live recording. Don used to say that the old-time songsters never played a song the same way twice, and this is a great example of that. This version of the song has a sort of dark and gritty feel to it, and I thought that Tom Russell would be the best person to sing this one with. Here's Tom Russell.
Root Hog or Die. Don Edwards did a definitive version. Root hog or die being a term really associated with being able to survive out there in the Wild West on your own. Root for your food like a hog in the wilderness. But I've heard many versions over the years, but Don's was the best, probably, and Andy Hedges does a damn fine version as well. Brought the song back to my memory. Root hog or die.
On the double circle range where the grass grows green, cattle are wild and the broncos, they are mean. The calves all get bigger as the days go by. Gotta keep a rimming, boys, it's root hog or die.
If
If you ride 'em out of horses, you gotta keep 'em shod. If you can't shoe 'em standing, then lay 'em on the sod. You can tack the iron to 'em if you got a mind to try. Better get busy, boys, it's root hog or die.
Well, out here in camp, let me tell you what we eat. Little cold bread and a little piece of meat. Little bit of coffee, whiskey on the sly. Then right around the cattle, boys, it's root hog or die.
Track 6, Philadelphia Lawyer. Woody Guthrie wrote this in 1937 after his singing partner Lefty Lou showed him an article about a Philadelphia lawyer being shot in Reno, Nevada. Ramblin Jack Elliott first recorded it in 1960 for his album on Prestige Records, Jack Elliott Sings the Songs of Woody Guthrie. Philadelphia Lawyer has become a favorite of mine to swap verses with Jack on stage. For this recording, Jack played my 1942 Gibson LG2, and I played his iconic Martin D28 with the bull rider painted on the pickguard. Here's Ramblin' Jack Elliott.
Philadelphia Lawyer was a hit record of Rose Maddox, or the Maddox Brothers and Rose, and I also heard it performed once at a party at Madison Square Garden Rodeo in 1949, where they had been recently awarded the championships in each event, because the New York Rodeo at that time was the National Finals Rodeo. They didn't call it National Finals, they called it the World Series of Rodeo. And a fella from New Mexico, I believe it was, who had won the calf roping, he was 1949 world champion calf roper, sang this song at a party, and he was in a uplifting mood, and he changed the pronunciation of some of the words, like the line where he says, Wild Bill was a gun-toting cowboy, 10 notches carved on his gun. But he said, 10 notches carved on his pistol handle. And I thought that was a very wonderful and risky way to toy with the rhythm of the words and make it all come out okay.
Way out in Reno, Nevada, where the romances bloom and fade, a great Philadelphia lawyer was in love with a Hollywood maid. Come, love, and we will wander down where their lights are so bright. I'll win you a divorce from your husband, and we can get married tonight. Now Bill was a gun-toting cowboy, had 10 notches carved on his gun, and all the boys around Reno left Wild Bill's darling alone. One night as Bill was returning from riding the range in the cold.
Track 7, Railroad Bill. Railroad Bill is an old traditional song that Jack learned from a record of Hobart Smith. The song has become a staple piece of any finger-picking folk singer. Cowboys have always liked train songs, and this one seemed to fit this album. In their only known recording session together, Jack and Woody Guthrie cut the song in 1953, accompanied by bluesman Sonny Terry. Jack was 22 years old at that session and 90 years old at the time of our recording. To capture the spirit of Sonny Terry's harmonica, I recruited Dom Flemons. Here's Dom Flemons talking about the recording.
When Andy told me about the recording of Railroad Bill, it took me back like 20 years. I guess when I first started to play folk music, when I got into Bob Dylan's music, of course, Ramblin Jack Elliott's name comes up pretty much first. And I found that over time, once I got past listening to Bob Dylan, I found I was so intrigued by Ramblin Jack Elliott's music, and I tried to find every record I could by this wonderful cowboy singer and wonderful interpreter of old-time songs. And, I even listened to a lot of Ramblin Jack and Daryl Adams recordings, and they were very influential on how I think about a lot of traditional music. And I guess around the early 2000s, that's when I finally saw the documentary, The Ballad of Ramblin Jack, and I was so moved by the documentary that when the soundtrack album came out, I picked it up first thing, and I was always drawn to this version of Ramblin Jack and Woody Guthrie singing Railroad Bill, along with Sonny Terry playing the harmonica. And so to be able to recreate the vibe and the feel of this song that connects Ramblin Jack to a much earlier era of folk music, leading all the way into the present, where he's working with Andy and also with me, I couldn't be happier. And I mean, it even got a little misty-eyed even thinking about having a chance to be able to represent the harmonica traditions that played within the cowboy culture, the blues culture, and then, of course, the culture of the almanacs and Ramblin Jack and all those wonderful musicians from way back. So I was glad to do a little Sonny Terry and pay tribute.
And here once again is Ramblin Jack Elliott.
Railroad Bill. I listened to a record of Hobart Smith singing and playing Railroad Bill on a Folkways record of Hobart Smith and Texas Gladden. Around the year 1950 or so, and there was some girl around Greenwich Village there, and playing in the park in Washington Square Park, that finger-picked that song, Railroad Bill. She was a great finger picker. And I think it was the first song I tried to play with the finger-picking style, like Hobart Smith. And he played the 5-string banjo and guitar and piano, and every instrument he played, he made it sound like a 5-string banjo.
Railroad Bill, Railroad Bill, he never worked and he never will. Ride, ride, ride.
Railroad Bill, he's a mighty bad man. Shot the lantern right out of that brakeman's hand, and it's ride, ride, ride.
Policemen dressed in blue coming down the street, 2 by 2, looking for a railroad bill.
Kill me a chicken, send me the wing. They think I'm working.
Track 8, Desert Sands. Brigid Reedy and I learned this song from old-time cowboy singer Glenn Orland of Mountain View, Arkansas. Glenn said he learned the first verse from the radio when he was 10 years old, and later learned the other 2 verses from an Arkansas song collector. Here's Brigid Reedy.
Hey there, Andy. I'm so excited that I got the chance to play Desert Sands with you and get it recorded. It sure is a special song for me, because it always makes me think of my old buddy, Glenn Orland. Glenn, as I know he was for you, Andy, was a really dear friend and a big influence on me. Even when I was just 10 years old and he was 80, we'd write each other letters all year round, and he'd always illustrate them, and I'd illustrate my little letters back to him. And in the last years of his life, we actually played a lot of music together around and about, especially there at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Elko, Nevada. And the last year that he was at Elko, we had quite a few shows together, including one that they called Glenn and the Fair Young Maiden, that was featuring our version of Barnacle Bill the Sailor that we'd do together. But on that last show we had together, we played Desert Sands, and it turns out that was the last thing I ever got to play with him, because he hopped in that old pickup truck and drove himself all the way back home to Arkansas after the gathering and passed away. So this song is really special to me now, and always think about my good old friend, and it was really a joy and really wonderful to get to play it with you, Andy, so thank you so much.
Oh, carry me over them old desert sands, with the yellow moon shining on high. Let me breathe the sweet air of a pure desert night. My fair old pony and I.
Well, riding and roping, now that's what I love. A life in the open I crave, the wild mountain rose and the cactus in bloom. I love them the rest of my days.
So carry me over them old desert sands, with the yellow moon shining on high. Let me breathe the sweet air of a pure desert night. My fair old pony and I.
Track 9, Ridin' and Commutin'. This combination of poetry and music was a mainstay of Don Edwards and Waddie Mitchell's The Bard and the Balladeer show. In his book, Classic Cowboy Songs, Don Edwards commented that both the song and the poem tell of the cowboy's love of being a horseback. Here's Waddie Mitchell.
Years ago, Don Edwards and I were driving in his truck down the road to some gig somewhere. I would read him poetry if I'd written any, and I read him a new poem. He told me how much he liked it, but we didn't go into it much after that. I was getting to thinking maybe he didn't like it too much. And that night we're backstage preparing for a show. He's over there tuning his guitar and going through some music, and I'm over here trying to go through some poetry. And he calls me over there, and he told me that he had put a tune to Badger Clark's great poem, Ridin'. And he was thinking about it, and he says, you know, I think that new poem you read me is going to work in there. Let's try it. He started, and then he kind of showed me where to come in, and it was pretty obvious that this poem and this song were really fitting together. We tried it that very night. We liked it, and we sure hoped the audience liked it, but that ended up doing it together for a lot of years. And you know, Don was was a genius at letting me be out of the time allotted to get my words out in a song. He could just always make it sound like it was just right. And so we did it a lot going down the road together over a lot of years.
There's some that like the city grass that's curried smooth and green, theaters, strangling collars, wagons run by gasoline. But for me it's horse and saddle every day without a change, and the desert sun a-blazing on 100 miles of range. Just a riding, desert rippling in the sun, mountains blue along the skyline. Who can envy anyone when I'm riding?
There ain't nothing like the feeling that you get down deep inside as you trot out in the morning when you've hired on to ride. And your mount's enthusiastic, and the air's crisp and new, and there's lively conversation going on amongst the crew. There's some bridle crickets chirping, jingle bobs tap out a tune. On one side, the sun is rising. Just ahead there sets the moon. Shadows high trot there beside you, elongated, keeping pace, reassuring you ain't hobbled by restricted time or space. Out in front, the boss is posting to the same beat as his song, and the realization hits you. You're right where you belong.
Now my feet is in the stirrups and my horse is on the bust.
Track 10, Saddling Up Time, and Track 11, Paladuro Farewell. Saddling Up Time and Paladuro Farewell both come from Andy Wilkinson's landmark album, Charlie Goodnight, His Life in Poetry and Song. In the definitive biography of Charles Goodnight, J. Evetts Haley wrote these words about Goodnight's death. On the evening of the 11th, he ordered some coffee, sat up in bed, and drank it scalding hot from the cup, as he had done so many thousands of times before. Then he laid himself down upon his mattress, as hard as a cow-camp bed, with his head on the special pillow, as unyielding as the seat of his saddle, and with the hot coffee warming his body as his fiery spirit still warmed his soul, died just at saddling up time on the morning of December 12th, 1929. Andy Wilkinson wrote Paladuro Farewell about his distant uncle Charlie Goodnight leaving the Paladuro Canyon and the J.A. Ranch. In the original liner notes to Wilkinson's Charlie Goodnight album, he wrote this: "The saddest of human stories is to never reach the pinnacle of one's potential. To reach that peak so early in life is the next saddest." I recorded Paladuro Farewell with Andy Wilkinson and my 11-year-old daughter, Maggie Rose, playing the fiddle. Here's Andy Wilkinson talking about his original recording of Paladuro Farewell on his Charlie Goodnight album.
What I'd like to say about Paladuro Farewell is not about the song. What I do want to talk about is my regret in having sung the song myself on the album. It was only after the thing had come out that I was driving down the highway with my pal Buck Ramsey, who finally mentioned that he wished he'd have sung that song. And I've got to say, if I could just do one thing over on that record, it would have been to have had Buck sing that song. He would have, first of all, sung it better than me, and it meant something to him in a different way than it did to me. So there you have it, a regret for Paladuro Farewell. Maybe a regret on the same order that Charlie Goodnight had when he left the Paladuro.
sold out and it's time for leaving. I've cleaned out my desk and it's all packed away. No man is ever too old to start over, but I feel like an old man today.
I've said goodbye to my partner, goodbye to the cowhands who work the JA. Molly, you're ready, but give me a moment. I've just one goodbye left to say.
Goodbye to my Paladuro. Goodbye to your ranges that I love so true. Goodbye to your river, your bright painted canyons. I'll never do better than you. I'll never do better than you.
Folks, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank all of my guests for appearing on the podcast and for being a part of the new album. On the next episode, we'll take a look at the second half of Roll On Cowboys, and we'll hear from Rod Taylor, Dom Flemons, Pipp Gillette, Corb Lund, Ramblin Jack Elliott, Michael Martin Murphy, Tom Russell, Randy Riemann, Brenn Hill, and Andy Wilkinson. I'd like to thank Hal Cannon for playing the Cowboy Crossroads theme music. You can find out more about Hal at halcannon.com. I'd like to thank my Trail Boss patrons Bob Kelly, Chris Ryden, and Scott Anderson for their support of this show. If you're enjoying Cowboy Crossroads and would like to help me keep it going, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Cowboy Crossroads. That's patreon.com/Cowboy Crossroads. Don't forget to listen to the new album on your favorite streaming platform, or you can order the double CD package with the 28-page booklet from andyhedges.com. If you'd like to contact me with a question or a comment or a story, I'd love to hear from you. Send an email to andy@andyhedges.com. Thank you for listening to Cowboy Crossroads.